We rotate roles being facilitator for every PLC, but I definitely took charge in this one just to make sure nobody else was stressed about it. So I wanted to make sure the agenda looked correct, make sure everybody knew their roles beforehand. A lot of it was just making sure that the team had, we were all on the same page. We had some data to look at, and that we would use our CFA tracker, which we have been doing this year as much as possible. And so a lot of it was just, kind of putting all your ducks in a row and making sure that, everybody had their piece. And I didn't even have to do that much. I mean, I checked in with each team, I would say Tuesday afternoon, and I was just like, hey, you have your data? And they're like, yep, we're good. Yep, we're good. And I'm like, okay, you've made my job pretty easy. I don't have to do that much. So a lot of it was just making the agenda, and then we just kind of copy and paste that. So we have, every notes, like every single meeting that we've done this year is all in the same document. And so then at the end of each meeting, we kind of discuss, hey, what needs to be on the agenda for next week? And we do a lot of within our grade level team. And so we kind of talk with our grade level team, and then we'll put it in there for the following week. And so it is kind of like a running agenda. And then, sometimes admin will need to put something in there.
Another reason why we rock. So I just want to throw it out there that we're awesome. Okay. So let's go ahead. We're going to go into our breakout groups, and each of us have data to look at. When we're kind of grading it, we kind of put them in those categories of they got it, they kind of have it, they don't have it. And so we can look at their scores that way. I think a lot of it is probably mostly in their work of what are those mistakes that they're making? Are they big, major mistakes that they definitely don't have it? Or are they little minor mistakes? Or are they not making any mistakes at all? And so I think we can kind of categorize it like that. But then when we look at the average altogether, we're kind of thinking, okay, altogether, how are our 8th graders doing with our solving equations unit? And what do we have to adjust in all of our lessons for all of our students to get better? Just like Johnson said, let's make sure that one of us is presenting our screen the whole time, so we can kind of see what's going on for people that are coming into the meeting. And then we will do a quick share out, just any noticings or questions, and then we will process, observe, and the agenda for next week, okay?
We're just looking at where's that average. Obviously, we want that average to be much higher than it is, which is why on this one, Cashby and I yesterday at the end of class said, oh, good grief, we need to take a step back and figure out what is happening and why our scores are so low. And I think after an analysis of that, we figured out that those elementary sort of foundational skills of multiplying, and especially multiplying, multi-digit numbers, that is not technically, part of our curriculum, they don't know. And a very large percentage of our kids don't know. And so we scrapped what we were going to do today and instead said, okay, let's have some flex time, and let's figure out how is it that we can work with these kids and kind of, fill in some gaps, but also work with the kids that understand the multiplication piece, but are just missing, what we were actually teaching about, which is finding that decimal point and where it goes. And then also looking for ways, how can we push those kids that already know both of those, that got, 3s and 4s on this assessment, how can we push them ahead and give them that challenge so that they don't get bored.
We made some dramatic changes. We were going to move on to division, but we were like, wait, we need to slow it down. So like Swag said today, we totally tossed out our lesson originally, and we are going to start out the day with kids are going to be in 3 different groups. So our group of, those 3.5s and 4s who are ready to move on and ready for some extension, those students are going to be moving to looking ahead at division, reminding themselves of long division, so that maybe next week they can kind of be in more of the teaching, leading role with our students. So they'll be working on an ed puzzle to look at some long division, reminding themselves of that, and then doing a Kahoot to practice, and then with the hopes of them kind of taking on that leadership role next week. Our middle group, we're going to continue to have them work on multiplication, but really focusing on decimal placement. We're noticing that there's a group of kids who are pretty good with their multiplication steps, have maybe a few calculation errors, but the majority of like where they were struggling was still with where does that decimal place go, looking at our original place values. So they are going to start off with an ed puzzle, looking at decimal place value. And then our lowest group, not lowest, but like our group who is struggling the most with both multiplication, just the process, whether it's area model, whether it's long out multiplication algorithm style, or whether it's with fractions, whatever they choose, they're going to be working to continue those skills, just like how do I do the algorithm? What are my steps there? So they'll all kind of start at their own level. And then with our two groups that are struggling more, 2.5s and 2s, those guys, we are going to do quiz corrections. And so we're going to have students go into, after they do their ed puzzle, we're going to do pair work today. And they're going to go into pairs for like the first question, work on that one, look at our feedback, because both Zach and I give pretty detailed feedback to every student for each question, like questions or kind of things that they can look at. So they're going to look at the feedback and with their partner make corrections, and then for about 7 minutes, I think is what we were thinking. And then we'll come back, go over that one, and then we'll have them practice again, switching it up with a new partner, doing the same thing. We're doing partners versus groups just because we've noticed participation.
We have this.
I have a question for you guys. When you looked at, so you had the class averages there, which you guys obviously said you already planned for. Did you look at like individual students to see if like it was a certain group that caused the average to go down, or was it kind of most kids were around that middle two range?
Did notice that like my students that really struggled with that multiplication piece, they couldn't even get to the decimal placement part. Like, they were just completely lost, and it's, they're using so much mental energy just trying to figure out the multiplication.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pop into another grade level and I will be back in a little bit. Okay.
As well.
Have them crossing at the right point. Like the lines were the right length, but they crossed wrong. Like there's only 3 little guys hanging off here. So, I got to honor like different ways of thinking about it, whatever. And the reason I started putting those in there is because we wanted to uplift discourse, right?
That's right.
And that is one of like those math talks are one of the ways I've gotten kids to really share out, because everybody feels like they can draw a picture and see a pattern in some level. So it's a good way for kids to, and then we have that extended thinking with the expressions. Have you guys?
Sure. So just getting familiar with what is an equation and what does the structure of it look like is really fantastic work.
Yeah. So we'll keep those in next week, but to remediate this, we'll just add in a quick, I think 7-number sort.
Yeah.
Right? Just the one we talked about with the 5, 4.5, that's a 7-number sort, 3 on each side and the 0. We'll just add in one of those. And I think the lessons are short enough to handle that load, don't you?
I do. I would suggest we mix it up, though. We should do some where they're vertical and some horizontal ordering. The assessments, they have to show their work in the Desmos. And I model it and I say, I know it maybe isn't the easiest, but you guys can see it. I can do it. If I can do it, I can do it, they can do it.
Awesome.
Right
Absolutely. I'm going to run over to your room when this is all over, because I want to talk about the lessons for next week. Is that okay?
All right now I'm entering my scores in for the periods. Sorry I didn't do it earlier, guys, so I just need to find the average of each class. And I just need to undo the missing parts. All right. Smith, so I'm wondering how your students did with fractions. Can you tell me about that, or if they made mistakes with integers or not? All right, so some common mistakes that we saw, We definitely need to work on combining like terms at the beginning of the equation. I saw a lot of students not being able to do that. And then after that, you know, we were looking at what could they do after they were combining like terms. Can they use distributive property? And then we also realized that balance moves are decent. Another thing that we noticed is they definitely all know the last step is typically to divide. All right, there we go. Thanks, Smith. That's a great idea. So I think we definitely need to make sure we are spiraling it into our lesson. So maybe, you know, we have 1 to 2 problems on our lessons next week where we choose maybe about 5 students to put into breakout groups and we go over equations with them. And then we can choose 5 new students for the next, you know, cohort that's coming in to make sure we get at least, like that means we're getting at least 10 to 12 students, you know, throughout the whole week in each class, which is, and then we also want to make sure that we are, you know, asking their opinion, making sure that they actually remember the equation, what they think the first step is. And then last thing we want to make sure we do is at least put 1 equation problem on every quiz until this unit is completely over.
Not the agenda posted, but let's have, we'll do 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, just like do like a quick 30-second share out. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. Go ahead, 6th grade.
Scores. And for our high kids, we're having them kind of look ahead into next week and become kind of experts on long division so that maybe they can be our teachers next week and help us out as leaders.
I have a quick thing. Can you guys share, like, I was in the room for a little bit and had to leave, but like, what do you think like the root cause was that they struggled more than you originally thought they would? I know you guys had that conversation, so if you want to share that.
We did. I think it kind of goes back to, we have a lot of students that are really missing that number sense when it comes to multiplication.
And on the main concept, they did pretty well, like the adding negative and positives. They did really well. Our scores are great. The main misconceptions, though, were putting numbers in order was the biggest misconception that we saw that we're trying to clean up. And we have a plan. So we saw it in a couple of ways.
I just have a quick question. It won't be 5 minutes, but when you guys looked at your data, because I missed the beginning of your data dig, did you notice similar data, or was there one teacher that was a little higher or lower, or was it pretty in alignment with each other?
I'll speak to this. Our data was very similar. Oops, hang on. Our data was very similar, and also our scores were higher than we usually see. Awesome. And so part of that, well, there's 2 factors perhaps. It was the first.
All right. 8th grade, we did a CFA on solving equations. We started this unit before the break, and so we were kind of trying to figure out where they were at when they came back. We noticed that there was definitely a group of students that know how to do it, and they know how to do it well. The only mistakes they were making were just like integer errors, not necessarily like how do I solve an equation. We did notice a chunk of students that definitely just copy and paste from the World Wide Web, and it's really obvious when they do that. And so we know some of our data is a little bit skewed because of it. So we were thinking, how do we get past that access point for them, and us just giving them another problem like on a Friday, they're just going to do the same thing and copy and paste. So we're actually going to do a flip grid where they have to explain how to solve something in words, because then it's going to be a lot easier to tell like where they're confused and stuck just based on their explanations. We're also going to spiral at least 1 or 2 solving equation problems next week into both of our lessons, where we take a group of 5 kids that we know are really struggling with it, and we work with those 5 kids while everybody else is working on the problems with their group. And then we'll kind of rotate those 5 kids. So we're hitting about 10 to 12 kids each class period in a week.
You guys have similar data?
Yeah, I think we did. She had a class where she had 4, how many was it, Smith? 3, 4 students
Yeah, so I had 3 4s, but that was my smallest class too. So it was a much higher average than the other ones.
Yeah, and then, but most of ours were, I mean, they kind of differed between class period, but most of them were typically around that like 2.5, a couple classes a little bit below it, a couple classes a little bit above it. But besides Emma's amazing 5th period class, that was,
Yeah, theirs was like 3.32. I'm like, whoa.
Wow. We'll all come
But that
watch
was a
your 3rd
much
period.
smaller class.
We'll all come to your 5th period class and see what's going on.
so let's process observe and then make the agenda for next week. And then Susan Elliott, you will take the floor.
Cool. All right. Well, fabulous job, everybody. You guys are some of the best coworkers around, but also just everybody, great risk taking today. I know looking at data can sometimes be nerve-wracking just because we're like, we don't want our data to be bad or something, but we just know that in this space, it's a safe space, and you guys did a fabulous job with that and just really digging and making sure that we are doing the best for our students. So way to go, everybody. Thanks for sharing your voices and honoring our time. And having fun, of course, always.
Awesome. And then for our agenda next week, kind of think about what you want. If it's another CFA you want to look at, if you need to make an assessment, if you need to look at an upcoming unit or look at the essential standards, kind of think about what you guys want to work on for the agenda next week. And who wants to be the facilitator for next week? We'll choose a facilitator and then we can choose the jobs that day. Any takers?
Ooh.
Oh, get it, girl. Okay.
I feel like it's been a while since I've done it.
Okay. So I'm just gonna put you. Oh my gosh, Swag, you're on it. Okay, so I'll put you for facilitator Smith, and then we'll make the agenda for that. Okay. Sweet.
Awesome.
All right.